Bush administration knowingly used, quote, bogus intelligence, unquote, to make lawmakers believe there was the chance of an imminent attack on the U.S. Capitol and thus frighten them into passing a temporary expansion of its powers to spy on Americans under the FISA Act. That is the charge of the chairwoman of the House Homeland Security Subcommittee on Terrorism Risk Assessment. Our third story in the countdown. For 2 years, this newscast has recorded the administration's willingness to try to terrify the public into voting Republican. It has chronicled the fears of the politicization of terror, fears originating even from the first Homeland Secretary, Tom Ridge. But these charges from California Democrat Jane Harman are the most overt accusations yet of a government gone so wrong that it is using the terrorist weapon of fear against its own people and against other legislators who will not go along with the program. Congresswoman Harman made her charge at a forum on the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act, FISA, conducted in Washington by the Center for American Progress. She says that on August 2nd, hours before lawmakers were to leave for a month-long recess, word of specific intelligence led to increased security around the Capitol. Republican Congressman Zach Wamp of Tennessee said at the time, quote, "The leaders of the committees of jurisdiction have been briefed on threats to the Capitol." And in urging Congress to give Mr. Bush the extra spying powers he wanted, Senator Trent Lott said on that date that, quote, "The disaster could be on our doorstep." Congresswoman Harman said the unreliability of the so-called intelligence about an attack on the Capitol before the 9/11 anniversary was only made clear the very day lawmakers approved the temporary expansion of Bush's spy powers. That specific intelligence claim, it turned out, was bogus, said Representative Harman. The intelligence agencies knew that. She added that the administration was guilty of a Rovian strategy of using terrorism as a wedge political issue. Talk about the nexus of politics and terror. At the same forum with Congresswoman Harman was Bruce Fein, former Associate Deputy Attorney General under Ronald Reagan, now Chairman of the American Freedom Agenda. Thank you for your time again tonight, sir.
Thank you for inviting me.
I gather that you share the Congresswoman's astonishment, anger, lament, and mine as well.
Yes, but there's something that you've neglected, Keith, and that's the president continues to insist, as recently as my visit to the Department of Justice last week, that he can spy on Americans without warrants, irrespective of what a statute says, that he has constitutional authority to override whatever Congress may do, so that all of this maneuvering over the statute really is just a charade.
But Congresswoman Harman's statement about this is pretty straightforward here, that the specific intelligence claim, as she said, was bogus, and the intelligence agencies knew that. Even if it is theater, Bruce, it seems to be theater with some effort behind it. Do you know, is that her opinion, her professional assessment? Is there hard evidence that it happened this way?
Well, I don't have any independent knowledge. I haven't heard anyone try to discredit Jane, and this administration is pretty good at getting after any of their critics. Just ask Valerie Plame and Mr. Wilson. Now, I would also say that this is certainly not the only time there have been misrepresentations of danger. You may recall not long ago, the Director of National Intelligence, Mr. McConnell, had said that it was the new statute that enabled us to aid the Germans in cracking a plot, a terrorist plot there, and then a few days later said, well, he actually made a mistake. The new statute had nothing to do with this. Though there is no disinclination of this administration to stoop to misrepresentations and omissions to try to heighten the sense of danger to get whatever they wish in the legislative package.
Another thing you and I agree on fully. Am I correct here in saying that the real bottom line risk would be that the administration can take any plot they hear about, or in the worst scenario, any plot they might dream up? They could take Plan 9 from outer space and they terrify the people or the legislative branch into giving them, the administration, any power they can think of, and
yes,
Constitution
I think,
be damned?
Yes, Keith, I think when we get to the actual negotiations that took place before the enactment of this recent statute in early August, the administration was openly telling members of Congress if they voted against the bill that the administration insisted upon, Americans would die, that there would half or a third of all intelligence would be uncollected. There wasn't any substantiation of that. It was just, trust me, we always tell the truth. And the Congress, rather than insisting that they be cleared for access to classified information and making an independent judgment, just collapsed and said, all right, we'll ratify anything you tell us is needed to protect the country. And it's gone even beyond legislation. The director has also said even to have public discussions like you and I are having about electronic surveillance is giving aid and comfort to the enemy and is, in a sense, unpatriotic, suggesting there's only one branch of government that knows how to govern and to protect us. That's the executive executive branch, and we should all be willing to play vassals to the Lord in the White House.
I don't want to try to send the villagers into the countryside with pitchforks here, but do you see any check, any limitation on this? I mean, can we extrapolate from what the administration has already done in terms of obtaining the spy powers it has or claims about what it may yet still seek to do in terms of obtaining further spy powers?
Well, the administration has already gone so far as say they can commit torture to gather foreign intelligence if the president thinks it's necessary. It's hard to imagine any broader power that can be asserted under the Constitution. It's really up to Congress now and the American people to insist that Congress stand up and display that they're members of the vertebrate rather than the invertebrate species. Because if they don't insist on access to the information and making independent judgments, there isn't going to be anyone there who's going to say, well, I'll go ahead and vote in a way that I believe will risk the lives of Americans. And really, the ball lies in the Congress, and really it's the Democrat Congress that was voted last November to change course rather than to endorse the status quo.
Can we do this? Obviously, this is bipartisan enough at this point. You and Jane Harman are not exactly under the same political tent. I don't think I fit in there either. Can we do this? Can we save the Constitution?
Well, there's a very simple power. It's called the power of the purse. And Congress, by simple majorities, could simply say no monies of the United States shall be employed to gather foreign intelligence in contravention of the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Act. It's very simple. Now, it is true the president could veto the bill and you'd need a two-thirds override, but at least it would be sending a signal that there is resistance to what the president is claiming, and that at least with somebody else in the White House, there may be a change of course here. But other than that, the president will have his way if he continues to frighten the Congress and Congress refuses to demand information and facts rather than just rumor.
The mind reels. Bruce Fein, chairman of the American Freedom Agenda, formerly of the Reagan Department of Justice. Great, thanks for being with us tonight, Bruce.
Thank you, Keith.